Emma, Barry, we're here in Los Angeles.
We are, downtown.
The Bold Conference, MindBody Bold Conference
2022.
And we've managed to crash another event.
We're good at that. Party coming up shortly.
Free parties, VIP parties last night and everything. Well done.
Yeah, we did it again. Thank you, Wendy, for doing all the work.
So, bit of an overview of what we're covering and our excuse to be here for free. We had to do some interviews, and so we had a great first interview with Amanda Carlson-Phillips from Exos.
Yes, and they took out the Icon Award here yesterday in the Strategic Accounts track. So just for the phenomenal work that they're doing. So they've got a huge heritage in athletic. So they did the biggest NFL draft contribution in terms of all those players going through this year. And they took out this award yesterday, and they're now shifting with all their background in athletic training and taking it into the work wellness place. So going corporate with it, which is really exciting.
Yeah, and some interesting ideas in terms of mental health as well that she was talking about.
Yeah, and just creating a whole ecosystem and all the things that are fully functional, optimal human needs. Amazing.
Lisa Starr, this was an interesting one. Principal Wynne business.
Yes, and Lisa was terrific. She also spoke yesterday very passionately, and she schooled us in what's happening in spa. That's not really an industry we understand deeply, so she was able to show us where they'd come from, where they were going, and where it's sort of intersecting with wellness, with health, with medical spa, and also the fitness industry as we know it.
And then this one I thought was going to be quite boring. You know, Senior Vice President of Engineering for MindBody. I was just kind of thinking this was going to be a software conversation, but very exciting, Mr. John Motz.
Yes, John was fantastic, and again, we've been around the conference the last couple of days. We've seen so much progress, I guess, with AI, with bots, with messenger AI coming in. And he was able to sort of unpack many things that the brand has been working on. I was particularly taken yesterday by MindBody Capital, where they're providing, through algorithm, through how your business is performing, basically the ability to borrow money in a very low risk way, because it's really measured against your business performance, not reaching into credit scores. And I just thought that's one of the things that businesses today actually need. I need to run a marketing campaign, I need to hire someone, I need to refresh the studio, get some new equipment, and they're answering that in a very safe, proven way with their capital partner. So I thought that was quite extraordinary, and he was just a lovely storyteller. I think they're trying to simplify the business. They've got a new leader in Fritz Landman, who of course has come from ClassPass, big background in Microsoft himself, tech entrepreneur, and people are very excited. He's 8 days into his role, I think, and there's just a really good vibe in the whole conference.
Yeah, and I thought some of the stuff he was talking about in terms of where software's going, things that I didn't even really think about, user experience and different demographics. It was quite an eye-opener, and some interesting thoughts in Web 3.0, which he shared. So that was a pretty interesting one. And why it's all fresh in your mind, like what's the kind of, like, if you have to sort of sum up, we've had some great interviews. I've learned, I always think I know quite a bit about this sort of space, and when I leave these I realise how little I do actually know. But what, in your side, what was probably one of the takeaways from some of the conversations that we've had today?
I think for me, I got the most lit up by the people who are truly partnering really eclectically. Like, I think it was the stories around helping communities. We were reaching from helping housing to gardening to trails and that was all based around a brick and mortar facility. So we're not thinking that broadly. We're still thinking, where do I get my equipment from? Should my yoga go with your HIIT? Like, we're still very myopic, I think, in the way that we're thinking about fitness. It's a big, broad world, and like Exos was teaching us, there are many human needs, and that ecosystem is quite broad, and I think we're just thinking too myopically, I think, that's what I took from it anyway, is there's so much good work to do if you just get the why right, and help, and then access. Access to me was just the word that I took from today. We are not giving access to the people that want these resources, and then we have to package it in a way that they want it. There's a motivational piece as well. Like, those were my big takeouts.
Yeah. Excellent. Right, well, it's a wonderful interview. I hope you listen right to the end, because all of them are, although they're quite short, little 15-minute sections, I think they're all very valuable. So, I hope you enjoy this episode.
And thank you for hosting us, MindBody Bold. Well, we have royalty in the house. We have John Motz, who is the Senior Vice President of Product Engineering for MindBody, who's hosting this fabulous Bold event. we're truly honoured to have you here because I know you've got lots of exciting things to share with our audience. And I just want to say we're 2 days into the conference, and I've been floored with the amount of progress that the brand has made in order to solve the many, many issues that people are experiencing across spa, fitness, or all the partners that you have in your network. Yeah. Especially at the end of a pandemic, there's been a whole new set of challenges, which I'm sure we can get into. So you just delivered a keynote this morning.
Yeah.
What were some of the things that you shared with the audience here?
A lot of it was focused on how do you grow, and it's the number one challenge we're having right now. Our customers are having. They're recovering, trying to recover, and they need to grow. Right. And some of their customers aren't coming back. They're trying to look for new clients, and they're trying to rebuild their internal business after losing most of their staff. And so talking about how we can help them and how we can get past this post-pandemic into the new world.
What are some of the limitations that they are coming to you with? They're saying, we can't grow because...
Number one is staffing.
Right.
There's not enough talent, and what we're seeing in the industry is the folks that were in those roles have since gone on to do something else.
Okay.
And they're not coming back. Okay. And so you need to now train new people, which takes time, and even there's a struggle. And so right now the owners are working the front, they're working the back, they're trying to run the P&L, and there's just not enough time.
Right.
And unfortunately, they're trading off growth to maintain what existing business they have, which is the challenge.
Right. Do you think this is a temporary moment, or do you think it will be ongoing?
I think everything financial is cyclical, and,
right.
and staffing is cyclical for me. The question is, how long does it last? And
right.
when the economy is where it's at, you can argue whether we're in a recession or not, you just don't know. And I think that's what's really on the minds of people. It's just not as predictable as it was before
right.
because of the pandemic lens.
Right. Got it. So we're looking at no staff models. We were talking about that a bit before. Yeah. So people are trying to find ways, I guess, to automate wellness, to...
what's interesting, like we have some customers that are literally buying robots to do massages on the extreme side. Right. On the more practical side, we think of AI. So we've invested heavily in AI. Right. We're building algorithms every single month. The biggest and most visible part of that is our Messenger AI.
Okay.
And it replaces your front of staff, or it can. It can take a call, it can book, it can pay, it can rebook, and essentially do all those things your front of staff would do if they were there.
I saw some extraordinary stats on that yesterday. You had a couple of your case studies present at the strategic accounts track yesterday, and they were literally, I remember 12,000. There were 12,000 bookings made over a fairly short period, which then turned into this amount of money, which then turned into 1.2 million, and that was no humans.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. So on average, in our strategic accounts, the larger accounts, the numbers are higher, obviously. But on average, Messenger AI will take 133 contacts a month from a location.
Right.
Of those, 73% are handled 100% by the AI.
Right.
Which is real money. Right. And even if your convert rate is in the averages of 20 or 30%, you're talking about thousands of dollars a month for some of these locations, which is real.
For just switching on AI, right.
For just switching it on. And
right.
I think the challenge we see is people sometimes hear AI and they're like, oh my gosh. But it really is simple. It's not taking over the computer. It's not controlling the location. It's basic algorithms because we have all the data.
Right.
We know the patterns.
How do you think on that? Because I had an experience, and it was it's more to do with the government AI messenger site. But some of these, like, how do you get the balance from supporting customers with like basic questions, and then sending them into this endless loop of talking to a robot that you kind of, it's like, look, I just want to talk to a real fucking person. And
you sound just like my wife.
How do you get that balance where you're doing what you're meant to do instead of kind of...
Are you the one that says representative? It's a really great question, actually. And so at the end of the day, it's being practical with the AI. And what you described, this loop of constant questions, it's about getting the answer first, not eventually. And when we launched Messenger AI, I don't know, 2.5, 3 years ago, when we acquired Bowtie, that's kind of what it was like. It answered some questions. It was okay. I would say about 60% accurate. And we couldn't do a booking scenario and a buy scenario at that point because you would get in that endless loop. Now we're in the high 80% accuracy with questions and answers because, again, we know what the questions are going to be because we take millions of bookings a month. And when you get the answer to the question right, and you know by the second message that they're trying to book a service and what the service is, then you just send them, here's the availability, and here's who you can book it with. Send 1, 2, or 3, make your choice. It becomes a much better experience, and that's what we have today.
Interesting. We spoke about it just before this interview, but trends in software. Obviously, there's the staff problem, and people need a solution for that. But what are things that you're getting, either on the operator side or the customer side, that has probably changed over the last 3 to 4 years, that's forced your organization to have to really innovate? And what are those kind of key areas that you're doubling down on, would you say?
So the behavior of the consumer has changed, and it's hard to anticipate that with COVID. But think of food. Food's a great example, right? Before COVID, I think the number, don't quote me on this, I think the number is single-digit percentages for food delivery. It's now 34%. That's a massive behavioral change. And so when you think about what's changed, it's consumer behavior. What we're trying to do is lean into that change. And so as a product and software guy, I love changing behavior. In fact, that's what I live for. And so we're trying to take our software and change how people use it, our businesses and consumers, to be more efficient in how they operate. Because you can't get more efficient without changing behavior. Right? And that's what we're trying to do. And so when you think about booking and buying, Messenger AI, you're taking some of the human interaction out, but you're getting hyper efficient within the process. When you think about cleanup, even cleanups become more efficient, right? They're working those process changes into the life cycle of the experience. And then when you think about acquiring customers are looking differently for services now. They really are. And they're becoming more savvy. I think before, a 45-year-old, my demographic, looking for something, I would pick up the phone and call. I wouldn't go to the web. I would just call. I'm going to the web. I'm actually booking with text, which it sounds crazy because I'm a tech guy. I wouldn't have done that 2 years ago. And so you have to lead into that, I guess is my point. But people are also less patient. That's the other thing, which is it's a double-edged sword for our customers, right? They're understaffed, they're struggling to keep up, and the consumers are less patient with far more choices.
Introducing the next big thing in functional training, the Escape Barrow, a revolutionary training tool that combines a loaded farmer's carry with a sled push to develop hip, grip, and core strength. Developed in partnership with Pete Holman, inventor of the TRX Rip Trainer and Nautilus Glute Drive, the Escape Barrow can be rolled, pushed, dragged and carried. The Escape Barrow packs a punch with an impressive load capacity of 440 pounds, and with a 2-stage galvanized paint covering process, it's also ideal for outdoor use. So head over to escapefitness.com/barrow. That's escapefitness.com/barrow to find out more. Enjoy the rest of this episode.
And I think, hasn't text now overtaken as the #1 way that people want to interact with a brand? It's something like that, isn't it?
Yeah, but more importantly, and this is a message I give our customers all the time, and they're seeing this, that consistent customer they've had for the last 10 years, 40-year-old, affluent, I'll say generally white customer in our space, didn't come back after COVID.
Right.
And there's an entire base of customers in that millennial and below, including my daughter. My daughter's 16, and she's a customer.
Right.
And we've never gone after that demographic in this market.
Right.
Not just MindBody, I think the market in general.
Yeah. I have to reiterate that because I think I just saw some club stats the other day, and I think one of the #1 new sign-ups to brick and mortar is the 2025, second is 25 to 30. Now, club, we come from club market, it was getting really old. We were ageing out. It's like we were following the oldies, the boomers sort of out, and there was no one new coming in. With the new digital age, you've now got people accessing goods and services in a way that they used to, which is, the tech native, I guess. So is it as simple as
I've never heard that tech native.
Well,
that's awesome.
Yeah, well, I'm just wondering, it sounds like the same thing has happened for your customer base as we're experiencing. We're all brick and mortar businesses predominantly. Would you say that, and that's the same in the spa business, which we're not so familiar with, but you are, as well as the pure fitness side?
So what's interesting, because it's you got to be careful because you can't read too much into the data because the data is early.
Yes.
But what we do see is 78%, I think the number 78% of people are willing to spend more money on wellness.
Right.
And we've actually recategorized how we talk about this. We talk about it as wellness now. It used to be salon and spa and fitness.
Right.
We're now saying it's all about wellness. We've also noticed that the reason for getting into wellness as a consumer is very different. It's not about body image. It's not about getting fit. It's about mental health as the key driver. Right. And so when you think about that, the market's huge. Now, how do you access? The access channel, definitely different. Young consumers, they're going to be on the phone. They're not going to go to the web. They're generally not going to come in person. That doesn't mean the experience itself isn't important. Mm-hmm. They value the in-person experience. And I think one of the assumptions folks made a couple years ago was that generation would be all digital. Mm-hmm. And what we're seeing is the exact opposite. There's even more value in that human connection of in-person classes, in-person services, because you're not getting that connection during the day. Think about us at work. Yeah. I'm used to being in an office interacting with 50 to 100 people every day. I don't have that anymore. And I have to get it somewhere. I have to. And so you go take a class with 30 people. You go to a service and have even a 20-minute conversation with someone in a salon is worth it. It's worth the investment just to have that human interaction.
Do you see, when you're developing, I'm not sure whether it's that sophisticated yet, but do you, in terms of your communication, the way you design the user experience, there's obviously a big age group. You talk about your daughter that's 16, and then there's probably a lot of people that are 50 plus. Is there there is obviously a difference in their awareness and how they interact with technology, but do you ever consider that when developing a user experience to kind of change, even simple things like size of text? Like my dad always, look at his phone. It's
a billboard.
I'm starting to get that.
Yeah. He's laughing, but not really laughing.
Not really, I'm frowning. You have to. And so it is different. And one of the things we do look at, everything is kind of mobile. Mm-hmm. It really is mobile. Mm-hmm. Now you have opportunities where, again, I'll use my daughter as an example. She's not going to type in. She's going to go, Siri.
Yeah.
Find a spa within 20 miles of my house, right? Yeah. And my wife is going to go to her laptop and search and try to find something. Get frustrated, by the way. But interestingly enough, I walked in the house the other day and she was Siri.
Right.
And I was like, wow.
Right.
And this is the reason I bring this up is, again, I get the changing behavior, right? Do you build for both? Yes. But you also have to lean in to the fact that there's an opportunity to take that 49-year-old that's looking at big letters on their phone and convert them to a Siri user and booking through Siri versus typing on glass. Because why would they can't see the glass anyway, right? Yeah. And so you have to lean into both sides of that. But I lean harder into changing behavior than to trying to solve for 9 different demographics. Right. Because then you have a mess. You really can. At least you can't do it at scale. And so you have to think about that when you're building the software.
And that must be quite a challenge to change behavior through, an existing platform. How do you go about even trying to do that? I suppose, you talk about the voice thing. I remember years ago, I was in a hotel at an event, and my friend of mine was doing it, and I'm like, I almost kicked myself. I'm like, why did I not realize that you could do that? And suddenly I transformed, even on I just talk into it. But yeah, my son, he was about 8 at the time. I wondered why he could do stuff, and I just remember watching him. He never types. He's never. A little bit lazy, but he's just everything is talking into it. But so he instinctively realized, why would I want to type when I can talk? And yet, for me, you're trained to do that, and you don't recognise an obvious shortcut. So it's just interesting. Like, how do you try and influence people that may not have even known that is something you should do?
So you just described it, right? You introduce the capability. You understand that maybe 10% of your base will actually use it because they're comfortable with it, and then you know that at some point your son's going to show you how to do it the right way, and you're going to change your behavior. That's really how it works. And when you think about that, I mean, think about this. I don't know if you remember the original iPod.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know when I got the first iPod, I looked at it and I was like, what in the world is this thing? And this notion of a gesture, right? We couldn't live without gestures today. And that's kind of what you have to do it. And the capabilities are there. You just have to layer some of those in. You can't go in 900% on it and abandon the rest. But if you layer it in, it'll take. If you build it well and design it well and it's easy to use, it'll take.
I know that you're in the design side, but I just wanted to say how impressed I was yesterday when we heard the launch of MindBody Capital.
Oh, yeah.
Do you just want to give us a couple of sentences on that? Because I think, given the pain that we have in the market right now, I was floored by how elegant that solution is and how quickly you can get to help.
Yeah, you know, it was interesting when we thought about MindBody Capital last year. When you think about the strategy, I think sometimes people think we're just the software for these businesses. I don't think of it like that. I think of it as we are the ecosystem for this business. And when a business is starting, what's the first thing you need? Capital. What's the second thing you need? Space. What's the third thing you need? Equipment, generally. And so we thought about where can we solve one of the early problems for our customer base. I don't want to be in equipment sales, and we're definitely not in real estate. And so capital felt like the obvious choice. And frankly, we found a great partner, and it came together quite nicely. And we learned a lot that with our data, we can do this without having to take credit scores and do long applications with very low risk. And it became a perfect storm. It's been pretty amazing. You know, I think we've got about 300 million in capital available across our customer base, and we're seeing customers get as much as $400,000 approved based on the business they've built over 5-10 years. Even businesses that are new, and they look at the data, the algos do the work. You get a risk, and money's available, and it's literally 2 clicks. It's amazing.
Yeah, the things I loved about it were they're watching your business, so it's on real numbers. I, as the business owner or operator, don't have to now spend time putting together a deck, going in and asking for money, taking weeks, months, whatever it takes to go and do that thing, but actually having it all there. And like you say, the no risk, because you actually know how the business is operating. It's working capital, so it's not the credit discussion. Yep. And some of the examples that were given yesterday were awesome. One was just like, I just need $700 so I can run this monthly campaign to do the yoga, whatever. Another one was, yes, the 300,000, we're opening another site or we're expanding. So, and it's all based on an algorithm, which is based on how well you're performing, and then it all just clicks into your repayments. I mean, I just thought it was so elegant.
Well, and what's even better, and I don't know that all of our customers recognize this, but because it's based on their business performance, it's the likelihood that they can afford to pay back is almost guaranteed. Yeah. And so the risk for a lot of these businesses,
for both sides, right?
It's anxiety. Borrowing money is anxiety.
Yeah.
Because the banks are always going to give you money.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Not always, but when they do, they'll give you as much as you want. This is really based on performance, and so you can have a level of confidence that, hey,
you can only afford this.
Exactly, exactly right. Yeah. If only parents had this for their teenagers.
Yeah. Well, maybe. That's
So what are the key things within it? Because Emma said it's nothing to do with credit score. So what are So are you looking for how the business cash flow and their costs and how much they're billing on a regular basis, or is it?
I don't know all the specifics on the data algo, but it's the algorithm. Definitely looks at bookings, time, consistency. Consistency is important. I'm sure it's looking at age of business, but it's the good news is we have all that, and we have the ability to always add data. I mean, that's the other thing about our business. We have so much data, but right now. it's probably one of the best products we've launched in the last year. I mean, it's just amazing. The stories I'm hearing, buying equipment. I saw a video where someone knocked their wall out and extended their space by like 300 square feet, and were able to add 3 new massage rooms. They would have never done that because they literally were booked out every single day. Right. Their only barrier was space.
Right. Interesting. So we were seeing stuff getting spent in staffing, in refreshers, in buying new equipment, expanding another room or opening another site. Just wonderful. I thought it was great.
It's incredible.
Hey, just in closing, so we may or may not be over a pandemic. We may or may not be in a recession. We may or may not be trusting our data. As you said, it's early stages and everyone's sort of expecting the next couple of years to be a little bit like this while we settle. What is MindBody predicting? Like, what are you building towards? What are you building towards now?
So right now we're building towards simplifying the software. So we've probably got the widest breadth and the deepest depth in the space. We have so much functionality, capability. It's why our customers sign with us. Like we solve a lot of critical business problems, but a lot of those problems were solved in silos.
Right. And you're 20 years old, right?
20 years old.
Yeah, so that's a lot.
It's complex.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be complex anymore. And so we're really leaned into solving the simplicity of the software, which has a really, really big network effect on your ability to onboard staff, your ability not to spend 10 minutes checking somebody out after an appointment, your ability to expand faster, add locations faster, because the burden of the software, while powerful and incredible and something you have to have, it needs to be complementary. And so that's what we're leaned into. And in 23, we're going to extend in AI for sure. We're looking at smart scheduling, where it'll optimize your schedule based on behaviors and patterns. We're looking at smart pricing, so we can look at aggregate pricing in your demographic and your services, help you make those decisions that a lot of times you're uncomfortable about. And it slows you down, right? And so simplest way to think about it is I'm trying to speed things up through simplicity and ease.
Got it. And then you've got fantastic new leadership. You've got Fritz coming in.
Fritz is pretty amazing.
Yeah, who's just proven leader, startup guy, tech guy, leader. He, did a turnaround on ClassPass. He was hilarious. What did he say in his opening speech? I inherited a product that was making no money and that the market hated. And I'm just like, anyone who can turn that around and then sell it to someone and then take over that business is, it's pretty exciting. So we're really excited for your future and all the best.
The future's bright.
Yeah, it really is. And he talked about that. He said, look, yeah, sure, it's a bit bumpy now. Look, 20 years out. Health, wellness, absolute.
Yeah.
What do you say, just a final question from me, like, look, obviously the more data you've got, the acquisitions that you've made, the power, as an example of what you've been able to do in the capital side is quite amazing, being able to bolt that on, mainly because you're able to sort of see exactly what these businesses are doing, potentially even predict what may happen, and so you can make some really, really good business decisions. Like outside of the finance, like what other things do you see? You're a software guy. Like what other things do you see coming down the line? Not just for your business, but what businesses will probably be able to do to harness some of the technology that's going to be available. Like, I'm an entrepreneur. I've got a business. I'm working with you guys. You're trying to find solutions to help me. I'm trying to sort of work with you to figure out where to go next. But what do you see as some of the sort of the macro trends that we should be thinking about as business people as it relates to the power? Because 10 years ago you weren't here, and your organisation couldn't do. 20 years ago you weren't here, but your business is probably in a very different space now in terms of its capabilities because of the data that you've got. Imagine in another 10 to 20 years, like what's going to be available? It's almost mind blowing,
right? So it's a really good question, and we're heads down building a new experience and really trying to help people recover, grow the business, and get into that next phase of growth. That said, when you think about what's next, what's really interesting is the tech is ultimately have to come back to what made these businesses so good to begin with, which is that human experience, that immersive experience, right? And I described on stage today, I went to F45, and the whole reason I'm there is because I want to be around people that are telling me not to quit. Because if they're not there, I'm not doing it. I can tell you that for sure. And so how do you then extend that through technology? Because it really has to be a connective, immersive experience. And you're seeing some of this with AR, VR, with boxing, martial arts. I've seen some cases where you're in a yoga class in an augmented world on the Himalayan mountains with your mat. And right now it's kind of a little avatar-y, but some of the tech coming out where it's real. Like it's like you're in a room with somebody and you're not in a room with somebody, or you're in a studio with other people and you're using technology to augment that immersive experience. So I think that's a really interesting space that when you talk about changing behavior, I think my daughter's generation is going to expect that. And I think my generation will grow to appreciate that.
All right.
And that's, for me, that's 5 years before it becomes kind of mainstream in my world. And then I think just helping our customers bring back what I would call, particularly in fitness, that competitiveness that comes along with that workout. And maybe it's a personal thing for me because that's just what drives me, but I think it's what drives a lot of people. And I think technology can evolve that. I really do. I don't know how just yet, but I think it's going to be possible. And to your point, a lot of it's data-driven. You're right. The data is going to help us make all this decision on what's next. So, but I'm pretty leaned into AR, VR. Nothing in 23 for us. Like we're too busy.
I get that. Yeah. And what do you think about the Web 3.0 and the metaverse? And I know this is probably not. I'm not trying to say that you guys are even going to be involved, but as an individual, separate from your company, how real and interesting is what's going on in there for any businesses and entrepreneurs?
What's interesting is I'm generally not on social media, but I absolutely stay engaged with what Meta and Zuckerberg are doing. And I literally just listened to a 3-hour podcast with Mark Zuckerberg, and I got a better sense of how he's thinking about Meta. And again, what's interesting about that is this is an individual that's leading a tech company, and he's forcing himself to not be on technology. He says the same thing, similar to what I just said, that human connection is critical. And he wants to enhance that human connection, not replace it. And so when you hear about some of the things they're doing, it is about immersive human connection, not about severing that human connection, which I think is pretty powerful. He clearly doesn't know how he's going to do that just yet, and they're making a lot of investments. I'll say this, from what I've read, they're investing heavily, but I like the direction they're taking. It's that human connected immersive experience, which is how I think you do win, because you got to be human. Like, imagine this. Like, this is so much better than sitting on Zoom with you.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God.
How do you know? Have you sat on Zoom with him? Yeah.
I sat on Zoom with people like him.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Yeah.
Amazing.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. So, MindBody event, hugely made up by spa representation, and we've got someone who spent a few years, more than a few years. We've got the fabulous Lisa Starr, who's Wynne Business Consulting and Education, and you've been mainly consulting for many years. So we would love, first of all, welcome to this podcast, but we would love, explain to us the spa business. We lean heavily into fitness. We have boutiques and big clubs and budgets and luxury. I'm sure you have all of those things in spa. Why don't you unpack that for us? You have journalism by trade also, so you really know how to manage messaging. So, yeah.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. It's fun to be a guest on a podcast instead of the host. I have been in the spa field, as you said, many decades. We won't go into how many. And, in America, at least, spas grew from salons. And so people didn't get facials and massages back when. They got their hair done. And when we started offering massages at the spa that I ran, clients didn't want them. Right. They were nervous about what would go on in that room when I was with a stranger without my clothes on. Yeah. So we had to put them in packages to get clients to get them. I mean, can you imagine? Now, this is the mid-'80s. And now massage is the #1 service in every spa around the world. I mean, it's come a long way. People realize that it helps your blood pressure and your general state of relaxation and aches and pains. So salons said, oh, here's another thing we can do. We can start having these spa services and have estheticians and have massage therapists, and then you need tranquility lounges, and then you need refreshments, and you have retreats, and it just grew from there. And so I think in the 90s in America is when you really saw that business take off. We still have segments of spa. You would have the day spa is the most prevalent, and there's about 26,000 spas in the United States, and I think 20,000 of them are day spas, meaning day use. I go in, I have a service, I go home. You have hotel resort spas. They get all the press, and they have all the best pictures. And if you go to Vegas and you go to one of them, and then you come to me and say, I'd like to open that, I say, no, that we cannot do that. We don't have that many millions. But they get us a lot of press.
Right.
People see those great pictures and they want to go. And then you've got destination spas, which is a place where you would go and you don't leave the property. You eat, you exercise, you do everything there. And then we have medical spas. And that's, again, another word that it means something different in every part of the world. But in America, it means that there's probably injectables or cosmetic treatments. In Europe, it's more not body treatment, but health-oriented, if you will. For us, it's more appearance-oriented. Right. So the big difference is that our business is appointment-driven, and we have appointments to fill up in our book, and we want to maximize the booking of those appointments, and it's not as dependent on an instructor and the kind of class. There's a lot of work around the menu, what you offer, how you price it, and of course, the experience that you deliver. I mean, at the end of the day, does the client leave feeling refreshed, renewed, transformed? Then you did your job.
You mentioned the beauty side of it. Where does IV and those sorts of the recovery practices, does that intersect with what you'd consider spa?
So that's a segment, Emma, that I didn't cover in my short introduction because it's a nascent segment that is evolving, and let's just call it everything else. And because we're in America, and we have the great entrepreneurial spirit and innovation that we do, we're seeing really interesting combinations of a massage and yoga studio or a facial place that also has injectables. And now maybe they're bringing in a juice bar. And, it's just, so the definition is getting very blurry. And then there's the wellness piece, which I'll get to in a moment. But we're seeing a lot of interesting things happen. Now, those IV treatments have to be done by a medical professional. Great. So you must have a nurse and a doctor overseeing. And so that's what we're seeing more of, interestingly, is those are a standalone. And you see a lot here in LA, in New York, in Chicago. I don't see many spas offering them, but I do know some that do. And they, people seem to like them. I mean, what's not to like? You sit there half an hour, you feel rejuvenated.
Great.
How do you, with the, I guess, as Emma said, a lot of the health and fitness side, there's this recovery area where you've got your cryo and your red light therapy who we're interviewing. And then you do get your IV, your drips, your vitamins, your NADs, and everything else that goes around that. And so there seems to be this, if you kind of drew it out, in my mind, you've got your traditional fitness and yoga, etc. You have what was the spa, where it's probably massage and treatments and facials, and then there's the recovery where you have the injectables, the cryos, the red lights. So they seem to be kind of now merging together into kind of like, I suppose I imagine one day you have a center and it's kind of does all of that. How do you, I suppose, coming originally from the salon and seeing how your side of the world's developed, like where do you see that coming together from, your health, your treatment, and Are you seeing sort of like a similar picture in terms of how it's evolving, concepts that are being developed, companies that are developing some of the technology? What's your assessment of that?
Well, first I'd say well spotted you, because we are seeing like these new things that are, we don't have a model name for them. They're new combinations. Some of them have started right here in LA, in fact. And generally they are physician driven, but they offer recovery services, and they're billing themselves as social spas or recovery spas. So it speaks to several trends. One is, I need to feel better, and I go to the spa and I get my facial or massage and I look great and I feel great, but how long does it last, right? I mean, my skin looks good for a few days, I feel less achy, but does it last a month till I go again? And so guests are at the point of saying, well, what else do you have for me? Like, no, we want more. And so that's trend number one. Trend number two, technology. We can do all of these things we didn't used to be able to do. We have new developments constantly in equipment, in the delivery of a service. So that plays into it. And then let's talk about this thing we recently had called the pandemic. So our businesses were very hard hit, obviously, fitness spa across the board, about a 40% drop in business in 1 year. They're climbing back up. Many places have well surpassed 2019. But, of course, the big challenge is that what we do is person-driven, right? It's an appointment with that person. And if that person doesn't come to work, we can't deliver that service. So owners are trying to mitigate their exposure to staff shortages. And these services that we're talking about play very well into that trend, because they don't all need a person or a licensed provider. So, for instance, one of the ones nearby, if you go and you make an appointment for compression boots or a red light therapy treatment, the person from the front desk takes you back, puts you in, off you go, you have a great time, and there's no labor attached to that. And that's very appealing, obviously from a margin standpoint, but also from just day-to-day operations are a real challenge now when people are not wanting to come in to work. So it's morphine, it's very exciting. I love it right now because it's like something new every day. We're discovering some new combination or iteration. I don't know that we know what the end game is, the long answer to your question. I think we are going to see continued evolution. And we're, of course, you bring the healthcare piece in. You've got the erosion of that line. We used to kind of be at odds a bit, and now they're beginning to merge. So you look at what they're doing in the Middle East with some of the amazing developments that are health and medical oriented, but also have spa.
What sort of things? What sort of things out there are you seeing?
The one I'm thinking of is Zulal in Doha. It's opened by Chivasam, which is sort of the grandmother of destination spas, which is in Hua Hin, Thailand, and it's been there for 30 years. They've opened this outpost in Doha, and I think the German soccer team is staying there during the World Cup. They'll have the whole place, and they'll have
of course they are.
recovery services, and they'll have the spa, and they'll have the medical. And I think that back to the pandemic, it woke humans up to the fact that our health is in our own hands. It's not a thing that happens to you, right? I mean, you take responsibility for how you care for the equipment, the skin, the body that you're given, what you put in it, how you exercise it. And we learned that if we don't do those things, we don't fare so well in pandemics. So it pays to get out and walk and do your exercise and take care of the equipment and maybe do something good for your respiratory system. So people are very interested in it. So our business challenge was that we had this confluence of, great interest, more than we've ever had in what we do and what we've been saying, and less people to deliver it at the same time than we've ever had. So we're managing. Spa owners and managers have gotten very savvy about how to schedule, how to optimize performance of that appointment book, so we can hit the numbers that we'd like to and deliver great experiences. I mean, you hear me talk about numbers. I'm a business consultant, but it's not just math. It's like, are we getting the client back because we delivered what they expected or exceeded their expectations, and they feel good?
How do you sort of see things going from people saying, you know, like I'm of the age where you're kind of starting to see lines, for quite a while now, but how are you seeing the trend from like, okay, I want to smooth out my face, so general aesthetics, to people thinking about, well, look, I'm gonna have this sort of NAD shot, or doing things that are more for longevity that are not quite as visual, where you come out and you look like a different person and you have your shot. Are you seeing a difference between those two treatments, or you're not kind of looking at it that closely? Does that kind of make sense?
Well, I know where your question is coming from, but that's where we see the separation of beauty and spa.
Okay, right.
Because when you go to get your hair done or your makeup or your nails, you know, you can see it. And when you get home, everyone says, oh, your hair looks so lovely. But a client doesn't leave the massage room and we go, that massage looks great on you. You can't see it, but you feel it. And so we have to teach the client that it's not about the outside reaction to what you did, it's about how it feels to you.
And how does that go? Is that an education piece? Like, are people looking for that quick fix? I just want that external recognition that I've just spent $500. How do you see, though? Is it still a bigger driver? And I'm trying to relate this to the kind of fitness world as well. Is it a case of, well, you look great in that dress, your hair looks good, your face looks nice, as opposed to people really getting down into, okay, look, you need to do this because it's just good for you and you need to make an investment into the invisible?
Yes, you do. You need to make an investment into the invisible because it feels good to you. Think about yoga, right? I'm a regular yogi. I love yoga. There's not a day that goes by that I don't do at least 10 minutes. I just don't feel right if I haven't done a little something. No one sees it. I mean, maybe my arms aren't as flabby as they would be, but I do it for me. I do it because it feels good for me. And we have this opportunity to teach the client that, yes, we still deliver massages, and we always will. I'm not advocating that we don't have those, just so nobody writes me bad letters after this. We'll always have the power of touch, and there's nothing better. But if we have empty treatment rooms and we have clients demanding things, we have to look around and say, well, what else can we offer them? How else can we improve their life quality beyond when they're in our space?
Meet that need, great. A couple of questions. I'm thinking of you, when I look at the parallels from fitness, a few things happened during the pandemic. We pivoted to at home. Are there any of the services that you've found a way to deliver remotely, I guess? And then another word we hear thrown around all the time is hybrid. I'm going to want what I want wherever I am. I might be in your salon, I might be at home, I might be travelling. Is there a way that you're solving for that as an industry?
It's obviously a little bit difficult to deliver what we do over the airwaves. A lot of salons and spas did virtual services. Right. They would send a kit. Like their clients would buy a little skincare kit and everybody would get on a Zoom and do the facial together. People were coloring their own hair, doing their own nails. But, you know, the quickest, our MindBody index from last year showed that the quickest growing services were lashes, Botox, and your nails, right? Because you can't do those things yourself well. We learned we can, and we don't like it. It's much better when my manicurist does it. And I think Botox is just the result of being on Zoom for hours and going, is that really what I look like?
Yeah, or when the filters come off.
Right, I love that improve my appearance button.
Yeah.
And so, yes, we spent hours staring at ourselves. So it's very difficult to deliver that, any kind of valuable experience over the air. But we are seeing community built that way. Right. And come together and let's meditate or let's talk about an issue until you come back into the place physically.
Right. And then I guess from your business coaching perspective, I think of spa services, some of the recovery labs that I go to, they seem to have a smaller footprint than perhaps group fitness equivalents. However, we might be looking after 50 people on bicycles or whatever, so you're actually talking about 50 people all at once. How do those economics work for you, like in your coaching? Is there an ideal square footage per thing? And then are some of the more luxurious ones, the ones you referenced before, are they wonderful because they are sprawling and beautiful and all, laid out beautifully by architects, etc.?
It's a great point that you raise, Emma. You can walk into a facility and think, oh, it's really beautiful, or maybe the design doesn't resonate with you, but the important thing is the experience delivered at the end. And what we find is that large, sprawling spas are not as comfortable for the guest. Mm-hmm. They're more, I can't think of the word, generic almost. Like, I remember going to one in Vegas, I won't mention it, with a colleague, and she said, I feel like I'm in a really nice hospital.
Right. Not quite what we were going for.
Tiles of beige marble.
Right.
People want an experience where they connect and they feel a connection to the environment and the people in it. So size is a consideration of your budget, your area, your target. There's not a formula for that. But once that's been established, we don't need giant treatment rooms. We need to be welcomed when we walk in. We need to feel like, yes, this is the place for me. I like it here. And I feel good when I leave. And I'm part of the community now. Mm. We are seeing more community-based activities in spas and salons, spas in particular. It's difficult because they weren't all built with that in mind, like with a large lounge or fitness area. But if you can have a group in for a workshop or a lecture, sound healing has become very popular. Mm-hmm. Did you ever have a sound healing? Mm-hmm. It's the best. I mean, if you have the opportunity, don't miss it. You just zone out.
We can actually see it on you that you have not. Like, this is one of the ones that we can see.
So we need to make sure that we can deliver a great experience. You might have a theme, like maybe it's Scandinavian or maybe it's American Indian, but beyond that, it's really about what we deliver with hands.
And let's talk about the immersive nature, because I think that's something we can learn from your part of the industry too, is really involving all the senses. Like, when I go to get body work, I like to feel safe, and I'm very particular around temperature. Like, I like to feel warm so that I can kind of zone out. Mm-hmm. And so in a big space, that's harder to...
It is hard to do.
To look after.
High ceiling, people are naked and they feel a little bit exposed. Yeah. Exactly, Emma. Yeah. They want, if there's a very high ceiling in the room, we'll use fabric and to kind of make it feel smaller and more cocooned. The client feels more comfortable that way.
Yeah, it's great. And then I think, the use of smell and things like this, which we're beginning to see some of the industry begin to sort of step into some of the other senses. But I think it's something Spa's always done very well. Probably because of product, and you came from salon and all of these things.
It is a sensory experience. Yeah. And we do try to make sure all 5 senses are addressed. I mean, when you come in off the street for your spa treatment in your street clothes and you're taken to a changing area and you put on a nice, soft, cozy robe and you sort of, that transition, not only does it satisfy the touch, but it serves as a way to put away the outside in that little locker. You're in the spa space now. We make sure it smells good. We have something nice for you to eat or drink. And it's not, chocolate. It's usually something healthy, nuts, dried fruit, herbal tea, and making sure it's beautiful and there's nice music playing. So the whole thing is definitely sensory. You might only be in your relaxation lounge 5 minutes, but we want those 5 minutes to be really rejuvenating.
What are the most exciting treatments, services, experiences that you're looking at right now, that you're seeing?
Exciting. Well, I like anything new, because I've been doing it for a long time. So I'm always very interested in what's new and cutting edge. I've been this summer to several spas in Italy, and they're a little more advanced in their medical testing, because in Europe they have that medical spa orientation where you might have an HRV test before your treatment. For instance, this happened with my husband, and he had an allergic reaction the night before to a food. He had his HRV test, and the doctor went to the therapist doing his acupressure massage and told him what chakras needed to be realigned. Whoa. And I was like,
whoa, okay, next level service, yeah.
Exactly, right? So I think the sky's the limit on what we can discover. There's been plenty of fad services where you see women with snakes on them and, having massages in hay and But they don't really last. I think that we're going to see the things that last are the things that have a real impact.
So on that, how science-backed is the industry? Because, like you say, there's a lot of hype, there's a lot of, oh, the celebrity does this, and this is the best facial, and this is, how does that get balanced?
That's a great question. Do you have another podcast? I would say that in America we have the FDA, and they will only say you can't say something when you've made the claim. They don't tell you before that. But the product manufacturers
Surprise.
are beholden to that.
Right.
On the spa side, we don't have any spa police going about and saying, wait, your menu says it will deliver this and you're not. But word of mouth, we know how powerful that is. And if you say you're delivering something you're not, the clients tell each other, right? So we have that to think about. It's a slippery slope, but we need to be careful about what we say and look at the resources we have. I will tell you there's an excellent place to look at some of this, which is called wellnessevidence.com. And it's a site that the Global Wellness Institute sponsored. And there are, I think, 28 modalities listed there now with peer-reviewed studies, just like medical does. PubMed is one of them. And so you can go on and see the actual studies of what this modality does. Needless to say, massage has many. But ear candling is on there. Acupuncture is on there. And so it's a really good resource when you do want to have a little bit of verbiage in your menu that talks to the scientific effects of what we're doing. You can find some proof there.
How have you, in terms of now your business, and I guess the world is different, it's certainly changed a lot over the last few years, how have you, I guess, tailored some of your products and offerings to where you see the market going and the things that people are looking for now?
Me personally?
Yeah.
So as a consultant, I'm most effective when I'm on the property, and I live in only one place, so it does involve flying about a lot. But I can do quite a bit remotely, and I think all of us consultants have learned to have meetings on Zoom, have people walk us around spaces on their iPhone. So not going somewhere quite as often. Before the pandemic, I teach a spa management course live, but I also have an online version. And we started that 10 years ago because people were coming from around the world, and it's a long way to come here for a 3-day course. So we took our curriculum, put it online, and so I had that already in place before the pandemic. And now I'm starting to develop more like specific retail-driven or front desk-driven training that can be delivered online.
Right. And with the, just to wrap up, because we're running out of time a little bit, but it is fascinating for me. But where do you think what's your prediction if someone's getting into this and they're looking to invest and maybe sort of opening a few of these, whether it's a chain or an individual, like what would be some of the things that you would tell them to consider in order to make key decisions about a business model that's going to have a certain amount of longevity? Are there any kind of things that you'd say, okay, right, we'll go out and think about this, look at this, make a consideration to that? Because it obviously is changing, and there's probably still a long way for it to go yet.
Well, you asked the million-dollar question. These businesses are not cash cows. That's my first statement. Don't think you're going to come into this and make boatloads of money. It's because you're passionate about it. Many spas were started by someone that was a technician and thought, I can do it better, and they're not necessarily on the business side. They learn. But you don't make as much money as you might in some other fields, but you make people feel good. And I will tell you that when people come into wellness from other industries, like we talked about earlier, and they tend to stick around because you leave all these people with happy smiles on their faces that you contributed to that. That feels pretty great. So I think the magic number to have is probably 3, not too many. 2 is never more. 1 + 1 doesn't make 2 in terms of revenues and profits. But 1 + 1 + 1 gets you there, provided they're in the same geographic footprint, and you can capitalize on marketing and back of house expense and management team. You don't want to open 2 locations that are 300 miles apart. There's not much benefit in that. So they're not inexpensive to run and operate. There is also a very low barrier to entry.
Yes.
I mean, you could do it tomorrow. You don't need a special license or anything. You just need the desire to make a special space for people and make sure you get some training. And you don't build it too big, and you think about change. You know, now we realize when we design the space that, well, this might be good now, but what will happen later? They need to be very flexible. You know, I haven't put a hard-plumbed pedicure sink in, sorry to my suppliers, in 10 years, because these things come and go, and once it can only do that, and then if it's not busy, you're stuck. So we need flexible morphine spaces to deliver ever-changing menus of treatments.
Very good.
It's great. Oh,
So where can I go and go and get a treatment with you then? You sound like you've painted this picture to me, and I'm already like relaxing.
Well, unfortunately, I don't deliver treatments, but I do have a podcast of my own, StarrcastPodcast.com. You can find all the platforms it's on, where I interview wellness warriors every week. I lecture at a lot of trade shows. I write in Spa Business Magazine. I provide a lot of content for MindBody, and I can be found on the airwaves pretty easily.
oh, that's great. Thank you for your time. Amazing.
Thanks,
you for
Lisa.
having
Thank
me.
you very much.
Well, here we are at MindBody Bold, and we're very excited to have Amanda Carlson-Phillips, who's the Senior Vice President and Head of Performance Innovation at Exos. Welcome. It's wonderful to have you with us.
Yeah, it's awesome to be here. Thanks for having me.
In 2003, you've been with the brand. Tell us what you do.
Oh my gosh, yes, I've been with Exos since 2003, and I've always been passionate about the human performance space. So I did my graduate work in sports nutrition, which was super novel at the time, and exercise physiology, and I found my way out to the desert, to athletes' performance is what it was called at the time. But Mark Verstegen, the founder, had this vision of integrating mindset, nutrition, movement recovery, methodology, facilities, seamlessly integrate it all to enhance the performance of the athlete. So I found my home, and I've been there ever since. And so now, almost 20 years later, which is scary to say out loud, leading up innovation for our company.
That's wonderful. And then just congratulations on a couple of things. Back in 2018, the brand actually won the Visionary Award here, and just yesterday you took out the Icon Award as just a wonderful strategic partner with MindBody. So congratulations to the brand. They don't give that away lightly.
Yeah, it was, it's a really special award, and just to be side by side with MindBody really for a long time, trying to make it easier for consumers and individuals to engage with different types of performance or fitness. It's an honor to be with MindBody side by side.
Yeah, that's great. And one more shout out before we get to perhaps the big contribution you're making, I guess, to the community at large at the moment is the NFL draft. You performed very well this year in terms of, creating a space for athletes to get ready for that. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, athletes, they are our heritage, and they're also our tip of the spear. So that's why Exos got started, because we wanted to efficiently and ethically enhance the performance of the athlete. And so this year was our biggest NFL Combine year ever. So we take these guys, they are preparing for their biggest interview of their life to go into the NFL. Hopefully, we had 130 guys that actually went into the combine and were able to show up and show off. And we had an incredible draft class, including the #1 draft pick this year. But it's a really special program. All of our athlete programs are awesome, but to see those guys transitioning after a lifelong of work into what is their career is just a really special program.
Great. And then I guess what we're really excited about now is you're taking this huge heritage of really understanding the human body and how to be optimal, and you're taking it to a new space. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that? And this isn't a new conversation for you. You're taking it to the workplace, high performance for normal people in work life.
We are, and so we've always looked at our methodological approach as humans are humans, and so when we want to be at our best and we want to be high performing, the human body and the physiology is the center of that. And so whether you're working with the pro athletes or our time in the military, transitioning that into the corporate space really was something natural, and we felt was needed. And so we pivoted around 2009 and started bringing those solutions, the integrated solutions of mindset, nutrition, movement, recovery, and said, how could we change the face of wellness within the corporate space? And so here we are kind of continuing to pound that rock in 2022 and bringing even more novel solutions into the workplace.
Great. So you pretty much took a decade of your know-how, took it to the workplace. We had the pandemic, which I'm sure you did some deep thinking over that time. Where does that place you now? Like, what are you focusing on in the workplace now? We're in hybrid times. We've had people leaving jobs, the quiet quit, all the rest of it. What are you noticing?
There's so much to it. And so prior to the pandemic, we were working with around 120 companies, about 30% of the Fortune 100. But the base of our business was fitness center management. So it's managing fitness center, it's being on site and bringing those integrated solutions to bear. But the pandemic really shifted that. So we had started, clearly, we had started thinking about, well, how do you bring those solutions in a digital means? How do you connect digital and physical? So we were thinking about it, we were working on it, but the pandemic really forced our hand. And so when you think about the last 2 years as we've been reflecting around, how can human performance show up in the workplace, and like, what is the role of Exos? And Exos, we're a coaching company, and we want to get people ready for their moments that matter most. And so when we think about everybody in corporate America as the result of the pandemic, it's like, well, we have to get them ready, sometimes in the workplace and sometimes at home. So nonetheless, we've been really thinking about the platforms to deliver the solutions, but also thinking about, what are we solving for now? And so
has that changed? Do you think that's changed? Like you mentioned like the athletes, and one of the things I'm aware of is that there's definitely a lot more consideration from the athlete side in terms of, you use the word recovery and mental, what is it, mindset and recovery. And I guess if you think about what people have been through now through COVID, the pandemic, it seems though, some people have got the exercise part, but they're almost not even realizing that mindset and recovery is such a critical part of that whole wellness, personal wellness. Have you had to change how you package, communicate, deliver more of a rounded solution than just sort of exercise as a result of some of those changes?
Yeah, I think the interesting part is we've been thinking about the integrated model since the very beginning, but to the point of how do we package it and really get consumers and individuals to connect with it was something we had to really think about. But also they were struggling in a different way. And this didn't happen as a result of the pandemic. The pandemic just made it more challenging. So there was actually a survey in 2019 by stress.com, and it showcased that 83% of individuals in the workplace were so stressed out that they were thinking about quitting their job. And so this was like something that's been festering and underlying for a long time. And so today, here we are, we believe that the mind and body are inextricably linked. And we've always felt that way. So now how do we bring those solutions to bear, where it is beyond just movement, how you fuel, how you recover, how you breathe, how you integrate meditation, all of those things play into helping us as humans have more capacity to meet the demands of what life has today. So I think that's what we're really learning as a result of the pandemic is it's not just a siloed solution. It's not just doing the movement. It's not just breathing. It's not just meditating. It's not just, taking your essential fatty acids to optimize your brain function. It's all of those together. And if we can integrate them and put the human at the center, understand their why, understand their limiting factors and what they're after, then we're able to optimize human performance.
Is that, you say that's our belief. Is that a belief, or is a lot of that based on kind of what you guys do from a science and research perspective? Yeah,
it's really based in science, and our whole brand has been based in efficacy and evidence-based, but also pushing the limits and experimenting a bit. So on our methodology leadership team, we have a director of neuroscience, we have positive psychology experts, nutrition experts, movement experts, we have breathing experts, the whole gamut. And I think what the science is showing us now, and the imaging and the diagnostics, you can see how the brain changes as a result of these. You can look at different neurochemicals. You can actually measure some of the feelings that we've been having for a long time. But I think, that's the important part in the workplace today, just like for professional athletes, is finding the balance between all of those different elements and optimizing performance. And that is the mind and the body together.
One other quick question on that.
Yeah.
What's your views on this? Like, I'll be a little bit controversial, and I'm not trying to offend.
That's all right.
I'm not trying to offend
That's
anyone,
right.
but like, so in the UK, they've just appointed a new health minister, and I had this conversation with a few people online, and my view is that if you're in a leadership position where you're influencing people, you have a lot of people that are looking to you, you're in a position to be making very important decisions that are affecting a lot of people's lives. Based on the research that you've seen, like, would it make sense that that if you have tools that you're using, that the tools that you're using are the best that you can use in order to be able to perform at your best level? So in a human being's perspective, like, are you compromised in terms of your decision making, your energy that you're able to bring to the role, and your ability to function if you're not optimizing what your genetics are sort of giving you? And we're all different, we're all gifted slightly differently, but if your physical state of health, whether that's nutrition, mindset, recovery, what was the other one you said? Movement. Yeah, if you're compromised on some of those, does that compromise your position as a leader of an organization, as a political party, in terms of influencing people? And should we, as leaders in whatever we do, really be taking that responsibility quite seriously in terms of, our own, sort of health, wellness, etc.?
I think we should be taking it so seriously. And I think we should take it seriously on an individual level, and then also on a leadership and overall infrastructure level. And so if you think about, we're in leadership positions, and we might be leading teams or schools of thought. If we are dehydrated, if we haven't, been working on fitness, if we're not strong, if we're undernourished, all those things change the way our brains work. Those can impact executive functioning. They can impact decision making, and they also impact our overall longevity. And so you think about, over time, we're getting more life experience, we're getting in more situations as leaders, and to be able to harness all of that for the longest period of time is important. But if we neglect our physicality, and we neglect the impact of the decisions that we actually make and the impact that has later on, we miss a lot of that. And so I think today in corporate America, in leadership positions within, you think about just government in general, we have to prioritize it. And there doesn't have to be, we're not having to give something up by taking time to take care of our human system so we can be at our best, giving back to the world for the longest period of time. So I know that's a bit long-winded, but I think it's super important. I think we have to think about, what are we doing, why are we doing it, and how do we best prioritize and make easy access, equality of access to these types of strategies to be, the best humans that we can be to create a better world.
Yeah, that's great. Fritz, in his opening remarks here at the conference, said that, of course, there's going to be a couple of settling years as we pull out of the pandemic. We sort of get through, all the drama that's happening in the world right now. But he did paint a very bright horizon where wellness, we've seen the shift from fitness to wellness, where people are now really embracing, I've really got to look after myself for my whole body, and for our future generations as well. Where do you, say, in the next 20 years, see the brand going? I guess we saw the plethora of platforms come up during the pandemic. We're seeing sort of a bunch of them go away because it's quite a competitive space. Are you trying to own a whole ecosystem? Like, where do you see Exos going?
Yeah, I think what the pandemic brought us was a number of incredible consumer-friendly applications, siloed solutions. I want to eat better, I can go here. I want to meditate, I can go there. I want to move, I can go to this app over here. I want to make the next big move at work, I can go and do this personal learning and development. What we see it, and really this goes back to our founding and our heritage, is that the integration of those, putting the human at the center, will result in an individual that is achieving what they want to achieve, is, being at their best mental and physical self and being able to apply that to their moments that matter. And so for us as a brand, how do we take that methodology? How do we think about our brick and mortar spaces? How do we think about not just the athletes we work with, but all of these corporations to create better environments for their individuals? And how do we think about this next round of leaders, emerging leaders or even more seasoned leaders, really embrace mental health, not as something that is negative or derogatory, but on the flip side. Like, how do we optimize mental health for optimal performance? And we've got some programs like that too. So we're launching the Game Changer program, which is an incredible program, which takes physicality, mental capacity to optimize creativity and grit. But anyways, coming back to it, the human's at the center. We all have a purpose. We understand human physiology, integrate those silos, create an incredible environment. And I think through the workforce, through the things we're doing in the workplace, we can really shift just how we all perform for the future.
How do you think we're doing on that? Like, these things seem very obvious. Yeah. We'll talk about the US. I know there's many other places in the world we can discuss, but let's stay here. But, how do you think we're doing or how do you think the Americans are doing on that journey? And I'm talking about, starting from the top, leadership in the country. We're clearly very unhealthy, and we seem to be getting more unhealthier as we go along. Mental health probably seems to be at the worst it's ever been. Food, people not moving as much. How would you describe that? And as Emma said, is there are we sort of making good inroads into improving that future, or are we sort of not even at the starting line, would you say?
Oh man, it's such a good question and so many layers in that. I think if you think about what individuals want, I read a recent stat, 89% of people want to prioritize their well-being. They're feeling like, I'm in pain, I want to do something. Now, we're in this sweet spot. Where do you take that want or that kind of spark of motivation and then get them into the right situation so that they can continue on their journey? And that requires infrastructure. I think there are certain places where the access of great food is better than it ever has been. Like in corporate America, when we first started working, the food offerings were horrendous. And I think you've started to see some good shifts over the last 10 years. Access to movement, access to meditation, access to all of these nodes is there. So I think that's an improvement. How do we bring it together, I think, is the next step we need to take. However, I think there is some inequality of access. And when you're thinking about an entire country, there are certain people that have lots of access and others that still don't have great access. And so if we're talking about an entire population, we have to think about both sides of that. So we can continue to push forward and have great tools and have great infrastructure. Corporations are the new countries. Like, how do you optimize environments people are in all the time? How do you ensure they've got access to things at home? But there's a whole group of the population that we can't ignore.
Then you've got access, and then you've got the motivation to access, right?
Absolutely.
And if we're dumbed down and we've been eating the wrong things, and it's not really something that we get up in the morning and love, you've kind of got those barriers as well, right, to make it more enticing.
There's so many layers to it, and there are a lot of barriers. And when you think about well-being and health and fitness and meditation and really taking care of our physical and mental body, there is a discrepancy, across socioeconomic levels, across geographical levels. But I think humans are humans, and we're prioritizing more than we ever have. We're aware of it more. We're talking about it more. And so I think, our hope and what's fueling us as we think about this concept of hybrid forever is that we can build great solutions to match that motivation, and hopefully that'll carry us some way further and not backwards.
Great. Thank you.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much. It sounds very interesting.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed this podcast. If you did, then please go over to iTunes and subscribe to the Escape Your Limits podcast. Leave a review, leave a comment. It really would help us a lot to continue to keep these going.